Hey, Dave Paulides, Canadian Missing Project. Thank you again for being here. And the last video I made was about the First Amendment issues in Yosemite National Park. Huge response. Thank you so much for your thoughts. And I think it's important that I go over a couple of those thoughts that you guys expressed. The big one. Screw them. Just go in there and film and don't worry about it. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. I could go into that park, I could film, and I wouldn't get caught. We use very small cameras. I could even talk just like I'm talking now. Nobody would get it. And I could get out of there and I could make the movie. Not an issue. The issue comes in that the National Park Service, just like all the federal government, has a huge staff of attorneys. And they love to work. And once the government realized that I had filmed in their park without a permit, they would tell those attorneys to go get an injunction, take the film down, and confiscate it because it was done illegally. They would take the film, they would get it, and then they'd go into federal court and they get a warrant for my arrest because it's a crime to film in a park without permits. So they get a warrant for me. Then they'd go down the hall to the Department of Homeland Security and they'd put me on a no-fly list. Now, folks, that scenario doesn't fly well with me. And I wouldn't like it. But I know that our government can be really dirty when they want to be. And they want to be real critical on certain things. And right now I got a target on my back. So I can't be doing those kind of things. I'm gonna have to do it legally, but we're gonna have to do it together. And it's gonna take an overwhelming response to the National Park Service that their controls that they are exerting about me not being able to tell my story in their parks is wrong. Now, not only do they not want me to tell the stories of the missing, they don't even want you to know who the missing are. So there was a professor from Colorado named Heidi Streetman, and she came to me after reading my books and she wanted to develop a petition. And we got 10,000, a little over 10,000 signatures on it that we took to a senator in Colorado who did nothing. And she did a great job of pushing it, trying to get the Park Service to be transparent. This guy did nothing. And it wasn't Corey, so it wasn't that senator. That's all I'll say about it. Now, yeah, I'm still frustrated as heck, and that's the reason why I'm right back here in front of the flag. A lot of you guys said, well, you know, our great nation isn't the best in the world. Folks, a nation is made up of us, people. And if you have the heart of the lion, and you're really willing to speak out and tell the truth, then our nation still is the best. If you really think of our nation, we're some of the most diverse in the world. We have nationalities from every country, continent, and that's what makes us so good. We reflect so many different parts of the world in the United States. So anyhow, that's my thought pattern on that. But complacency has hurt us as a people. We think everything's rosy, everything's good, but it's things around you that are happening that you would never hear about otherwise if it wasn't for investigative journalists and filmmakers that wanted to go out and tell the story. Because right now people aren't reading books, so my 9 books aren't getting read much. And I talk to other authors all the time. Sales are horrible, but yeah, sad. So, some of you also talked about going to the White House and putting an online petition and going through the government website getting 100,000 signatures and getting it in front of the president. I'm all for that. Not right now. Reason being, both parties are in such turmoil about this election. If we got the signatures in a month, nothing would happen. Let things settle down. Let the president take over. Give him a couple months. Maybe April of next year, I'll put that petition up with specific wording to press it. And probably the wording I'm going to use is that the Park Service has to reveal all the missing people in their parks. And they need to put down criteria so that all people, regardless of the agenda in the film, as long as it's not illegal, should have a right to film in our parks, period. Having a superintendent at a park or having some bureaucrats decide, I don't want that story told in my park, so I'm not going to say it. And the bureaucrats thinking it's a privilege and it's their right to decide who films in that park, I don't think so. So we're going to come up with some wording to address this in a petition. And right now I've got about 160 plus thousand subscribers. And hopefully you guys out there and ladies will help me get those petitions signed and get over the 100,000 person mark, which is critical. So what else can I tell you? A lot of you guys and ladies are still writing in, Paulides needs to get on Joe Rogan. That's pretty funny, actually. Now it's funny. So in the paper just the other day, it said Joe Rogan buys $14 million Lake Austin, Texas mansion. $14 million? Woo! Congrats, Joe. You worked hard for it. Hope you appreciate it. And he's moving his operation to Texas, from what I understand. You know that there's a show that was on the radio years ago. It's called Brushes with Fame. And it was stories people would call in about how they met somebody famous or they shook somebody famous's hand and how they responded. So here's my story with Joe Rogan. My son lives in LA. He's a vegetarian. And whenever I'm down there, he and I go out and try to find a good vegetarian restaurant. And I like vegetarian food. And we sit down and eat. Well, he knew the owner of this one place, pretty famous place, an Ayurvedic restaurant in LA area. And it turns out that Joe Rogan's daughter is a vegetarian. Really, really nice girl from what I heard. Joe's done a good job raising her. Congratulations. And Joe supposedly came in the restaurant with, from a Mexican restaurant next door with some, chicken or beef or something. And I guess some of the people in the vegetarian restaurant got upset, but they didn't say anything. And they had a good conversation with Joe. But I guess the next day I was in there and the owner of the restaurant was telling my son about this incident with Joe. So, Joe, I missed you by that much. So apparently he lives in that area and his daughter goes to that restaurant. So, my story about Joe Rogan. What else can I tell you before we get deep into it? I think that's about it. What I'm going to start with today is reading you some letters I got in the mail that are pretty interesting. And then we're going to stay on the Yosemite topic with a couple of stories out of Yosemite that should shake your core. So the first story, Mr. Paulides, I'm joyful about being directed to your material. I'm a 78-year-old husband of a woman for the past 58 years and the grandfather of 17. Holy cow. I've spent my life as an international Bible teacher, visited 30 nations, most often alone. I've been an avid hunter my whole life, also usually done alone. My too often loneliness is the focus of your writing. I won't bore you with the theology, but the Bible provides explicit indications of an invisible parallel dimension layered in aside ours. It is no less varied in plant, wildlife, species, and sophisticated societies. In short, all through the years, I felt watched over by nearby onlookers in addition to the Lord. The following event is one of the several incidents that seemingly confirm my suspicions. Perhaps, if that wasn't so, I might have become one of your statistics. In 2004, I accompanied my son-in-law and my two granddaughters to an Indian princess outing for the YMCA. It was held in a recreational dude ranch near Lake Wales, Florida. The outing's purpose was to give busy fathers quality time with daughters. Having raised a daughter, that's really important. And the more dads that spend time with their daughters and their sons, the more important it is in life later on. The second evening there, I sat enjoying the moon's reflection on the lake. There was a pine woods off to my left, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw something large and bright passing between the trees at an exceptionally rapid speed. I turned and gave it my full attention. An oblong orb, ORB, that was about 4 feet in diameter burst over the lake at about 20 feet in the air and about 15 yards from me. It glowed with a slightly pulsating white light. It came to a complete stop, suspended in the air. I watched it for 2 minutes. I was mystified, but I had no sense of alarm, even though I had a strange sense that it was observing me. Actually, sir, what I sensed was that it knew me. Then it descended away from the scene at an incredible rate of speed and disappeared from sight over the trees. There was not any motorized sound. When my son-in-law came back from bidding the girls good night, I told him that what I had witnessed. He got his camp chair and sat down next to me. We chuckled about guesstimates as to what it might have been. My having a senior moment was high on his list. I endured his battering until 5 glowing orbs of the same measurement shot from the woods to our left. They stopped over the water, exact same height and distance from the previous one. It appeared that the first orb had collected friends to observe the two of us. After about 2 minutes, the disc-like orb on the far right shot away, followed by the others. They streaked directly upward and disappeared out of sight. Since that time, neither Doug nor I have become UFO enthusiasts. We regarded this event as simply an interesting happening. Just for the record, after getting caught alone at night in a storm in the San Juans above Pagosa Springs on an elk hunt, I've changed my ways. They found me by emptying my rifle and Colt 45 in periodic 3-shot successions. Nowadays, when I go to a hunt boar or big game, I text the sheriff buddy my GPS locations. The rule is that if I don't check back within 2 hours, they investigate. Blessings to you. A few things. Good letter. I like it. And the orb part is not that unusual, folks. Now, this wasn't something standard that you would think of that you might find. This was unusual. But in Missing 411 The Hunted, which you can watch right now on Amazon Prime, and you can watch Missing 411 Hunters on YouTube for free, and I encourage you to watch both. In Hunted, there was a long tubular orb that was in that movie. And it was seen by some campers way up in the Sierras. And these things happen more than you think. And it's easy to discount it and say, oh, the people were drinking, smoking weed, whatever. No. Not happening with the people I know under the circumstances that they explained. So I want you to have an open mind when you hear these things. Don't close it off just because. Well, probably because the way you were either raised or the way you were conditioned by either watching TV or being around certain friends who also didn't believe it. I have one of my best lifelong friends that doesn't believe the UFOs are real, doesn't believe in aliens, doesn't believe in anything paranormal at all. And I could sit down and calmly discuss this with him and say, hey, the people that have seen this are top-notch police officers, firefighters, paramedics, physicians. Doesn't matter to him. He just doesn't want to believe it. There's one guy I wish that he had seen something really odd. It's him, because I'd love to be with him when he saw it. But anyhow, one other thing before I go on. I talked about Agent Stephen Yu, Special Agent Stephen Yu, in my last video, who was very rude to me, and who actually called me a liar when we were having our discussion about getting a copy of a missing person report from the Park Service. And I told him that I had gotten several other reports of missing people that were still missing. He said, you're a liar. That's the kind of guy he is. And to call me a liar when he doesn't even know me, and I have dozens of cases that are still open with the Park Service on missing people. Now, I don't know why Stephen Yu took it upon himself to take that stance. But when I talk about him being a special agent, I know everyone thinks, oh, FBI. No, special agent for the National Park Service, not part of the FBI. The special agents are the investigative arm of the National Park Police. There's either 4 or 5 different regional offices of special agents. One of them is at Yosemite, where Stephen is assigned. So, anyhow, what else do I need to tell you? The response on the last video, huge, huge. And I got a couple of inquiries from law firms. Nobody's decided to take the case yet, and I understand it. The guesstimates are $300,000 to $500,000 to take on the Park Service because they will fight this incessantly and needlessly, whereas if it was a private party and they actually had to pay for the attorneys, it'd be all settled quickly. But the National Park Service is going to fight it for a long time, and that means forcing a law firm to come back time after time after time to react, file paperwork, etc. That's the way our government is. So, next letter. Mr. Paulides, first time, hello. My name is blank. I spent a few years in law enforcement, but most of my life in aviation. I do hold a commercial pilot's license. I'm a retired GS-15 from the FAA. FAA, for other people outside the country, Federal Aviation Agency, where I was in management for about 15 years before retirement. I say that to let you know that I've seen how people in powerful positions within the government can act. And even though there are good, upright managers, I was disgusted several times with some. I was born in the 50s, and sometime in late 60s or so, I was camping with a friend of mine not far from our houses in the corner of another friend's pasture. We were a few miles south of Weatherford, Texas. To make the story short, late that night, we saw 4 sphere-shaped UFOs up close. They finally came to a stop at low altitude above the center of the pasture where we were camping. I was very scared and thought they were going to take us as lab rats or zoo exhibits. Luckily, Carswell Air Force Base launched a fighter towards them, and the UFOs disappeared straight up into the sky within seconds. The fighter circled the area twice and returned home. In '98, we bought a house and some acreage in Johnson County, Texas, and shortly found ourselves dealing with a couple of ghosts out there. I said all of that to support this statement. I totally agree with what Richard Dolan told you. What Richard Dolan told me. Richard and I are friends. He's a brilliant guy. And he said, after reading several of the books, he said, Dave, I've just got this feeling that the intelligence that may be involved in this is so far beyond our understanding, so far beyond our physical realm, that to understand it may be impossible. In physical form, we always think of ourselves. Well, if it's intelligent, it must be humanoid. What if it looked like an octopus? You don't know. And just because something is odd-shaped and small, does that mean their intelligence is small? And when we think, we're lab rats and maybe they're feeding on us, no, maybe it's something we really don't understand. People have told me in the past, Dave, maybe they're trying to steal our soul, S-O-U-L, and that's why when they find the body, they can't find a cause of death. Food for thought. So back again. I thank you for bringing this subject of missing outdoorsmen women to our attention in such an excellent professional manner. You've done an outstanding job, sir, and I salute you. Now back to the government. It is shameful the way the National Park Service is treating you. Is there anything I or we as your followers can do? Would a complaint from a senior citizen like me do any good? I think not. But if you have a name or an office, I don't mind getting a letter off to them. This message is intended for you personally, but if you decide to read it on your program, feel free. I see no need for anonymity. Thank you. So, I told you in the last video, and I'll explain it to you again here, that right as the screen you're looking at, right below it, it says description of video. You click on that and a page will come up and it'll show you all the places, my websites, where you can buy the books, where you can watch the movies, and one of the websites under current events, which will be linked there, is the place where you can read what the national park has said to me, what this one specific ranger said to me, and contact point for him if you want to email him. So anyhow, enough of that. On to the cases. Now, I talked to you about Yosemite for a couple of reasons. First of all, Yosemite has at least 50 missing people in the park. In the surrounding area, over 100. And it's the biggest cluster of missing people in the world that I've been able to find. And on the cluster map, the numbers are huge. So let's talk about one of the cases. April 26, 1933, a 26-year-old man named Godfrey Wandrasak. He's 26 years old. He traveled from Chicago with his sister to stay in the park and explore. And he decided after they arrived that he was going to climb Half Dome. And if you guys have never done it, wow, gorgeous. During the summertime, the Park Service puts up cable and ropes so that you can hold on. It's a steep walk up a pure granite wall, not special climbing needed, but you need to be in decent shape, and I'll take you to the top. It's something you'll never forget. If you can hear that, that's rain outside. But anyhow, he took off. He didn't come back. He didn't tell his sister exactly where he was going, but he was thinking about climbing Half Dome, but he left too late in the afternoon to do that. So the Rangers get a massive amount of searchers together. They get Native American trackers together. Trust me, if I'm ever lost, I want the Native American trackers on it, or the First Nations trackers from Canada. Those people are phenomenal at their job. And as they were searching, it started to rain, snow. The Rangers said that there's no way he could have summited. And they searched everywhere. They found some tracks in the mud and nothing to say he even went up onto Half Dome. But folks, in 87 years, this man's body's never been found. How is that? When there's people all over that area. Probably in the 87 years, tens of millions of people have gone through that park. So, how come nothing was ever found? To me, that's impossible. It makes no sense. But I've got a lot of those cases from Yosemite. Now, these aren't cases where people are going way back into the backcountry. No. Now, another case. This one's more disturbing. And her name was, the woman's name was Evelyn Roseman, 24 years old. And on or about the first week in October 1968, she was a dancer in Los Angeles and San Francisco. And she decided when in San Francisco she was going to rent a car and she wanted to go tour Yosemite. And the first night she went to a city called El Portal, and she spent the night. And she hiked around Nevada Falls, pretty rough area. And then the following night, she stayed in Camp Curry. Camp Curry is a camp at the base of Yosemite. And what it is, it's sturdy framed little dwellings with tent-like canvas material with beds inside. It's kind of cool. I've done it many times, a lot of fun. Problem is that you're camped right next to somebody else, and so it's almost like a big community out there during the summer. But she took off, went back up to Nevada Falls, rough hike, but she went up there supposedly. Now, when I wrote about this story in 2010, it never existed online. Since I wrote about it, a lot of people have written about it. And why? Because it's very strange. So on October 19th, some hikers came across Evelyn's body. And it was near the Merced River. And her body appeared to have fallen some distance. And she had broken bones. She was deceased. She had a sweater pulled up over her head. She still had a top on. Some thought that she had fallen or was thrown 594 feet from the top of the falls. There was brain trauma. An autopsy said probably killed by fall. Didn't say from where. Probably killed by fall, not killed by fall. When they did their investigation on the scene, she was found off the river, but brain matter was found on a rock in the river. And during the autopsy, they noted that there were bloodless lacerations in her female area. And that meant to investigators that she was probably sexually assaulted. So the water flow during that time of the year was very low. And guess who shows up during the investigation? If anybody follows my investigations, follows my writings, you know who showed up. The FBI. Now, the National Park Service, again, has special investigators. But the FBI shows up. So, very suspicious. Why are they showing up in a national park? Well, because this case is super suspicious. Part of the story is that she was either raped or sexually assaulted right before or right after she fell. But her body was too far from the bottom of the cliff to fall naturally and travel that distance. One of the reports from one of the rangers stated it appeared she was launched. You heard that right, launched. Others said she was thrown. So, folks, I like to think I'm in decent shape. I couldn't throw a woman very far. Come on, be real. So, did she fall? Probably not, naturally. Was she thrown? If so, by what? Or was she dropped from something? Now, I'm going to read you an article in the October 25th edition of the Oakland Tribune. It says, FBI agents and Mariposa County coroner deputies today were searching two remote spots in Yosemite National Park for clues in the, quote, probable murder of a young San Francisco woman. An autopsy revealed that Evelyn Roseman, 24 years old, had been sexually assaulted before her death. It was disclosed by the Office of the Coroner Sheriff, Norman Garrett. The areas being searched today were the spot at the top of Nevada Falls in rugged high country of the park, where the woman's pocketbook was found by a hiker last Friday, and the spot near the foot of the falls where her body was found the following day. Investigation was originally started by the FBI because of, quote, some things that don't add up, end of quotes, Under Sheriff Paul Page explained today. The body was near the bottom of the falls, quote, I'm starting to quote, but not where you'd expect it to be if she'd fallen, end of quotes. And although most of the bones in Miss Roseman's body were broken, quote again, the flesh and skin were attacked, end of quotes, he said, quoting again, which is not consistent with a 300-plus foot fall, end of quotes. FBI agents asked that anyone who had seen the woman October 18th or 19th contact park rangers or the FBI office in Merced or Sacramento. They said she had rented a car in San Francisco Wednesday and driven to El Portal where she spent the night. She spent Thursday night in Camp Curry. She apparently hiked into Nevada Falls in rough, difficult terrain inaccessible to autos, the FBI stated. Friends, come on, man. That story was written as though we are idiots. The FBI does not show up on scene for their health. If they're going to come into a national park, they're coming in there for a really good reason, where they are as confused as we are. And they're trying to figure this out just like we are. When the sheriff says things don't add up, those are words you don't hear very often from law enforcement. And that meant he was confused. The National Park Service still has this report. We'll never see it. And that's part of the issue about the Freedom of Information Act and the flow of ideas. This report was from 1968. Very old. The idea that there was some crime associated with this, yeah, in the pure sense, I'm sure it was a crime. But will we ever hear the result of the investigation? Never. Is anyone else going to push to get this uncovered? No. And why doesn't the Park Service want you to know about this? Good question. A lot of you have stated, well, is it because they don't want the revenue to go down from visitation? I find that hard to believe. There's got to be some other reason that we just don't understand. A lot of times I've stated, well, I've read these reports, these older reports from the national parks and other jurisdictions, and they're not very well done. I doubt in this case it's that. With the FBI coming into the scene, they were true professionals in their day, and I would greatly assume that it was done right, especially since they found brain matter on the rock in the middle of the river. Now, that brings up the question, did she fall on the rock in the middle of the river and then get pulled to the shore by someone, something that we don't know? So there's so many questions with that case, I don't even know where to start. But I have a difficult time understanding why a single woman who's a dancer would go that far into the wilderness to get to the top of Nevada Falls. It almost, to me, seems as though something intervened, something happened. But the thoughts that some of you may have out there that, oh, somebody carried her or dragged her up to that spot. Nope. Until you understand how hard it is to carry anything uphill in the wilderness, forget it. Just carrying a backpack that weighs 40 or 50 pounds on your back in a contained environment while it's resting on your hips in a comfortable backpack, that's hard to do going uphill for a whole day. Take a 120-pound woman who's fighting and forget it. It's not going to happen. I don't care if you were as big as Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime. That guy's going to get tired. So, no, I don't believe it. So, Yosemite, high on my list for unusual occurrences. And a lot of odd things have happened there that I've written about. So, if you want to get a hold of me, my email is under that descriptive box. All the links to watch the movies are there. Our websites are there. Keep plugging these videos, please. There's tens of millions of people who don't know anything about what I just talked to you. They don't know really what the National Park Service is doing. And they all think that the National Park Service is this friendly bear talking on the TV about how safe it is to be in the forest. One of the best marketing jobs in the world. So, again, I am deeply, deeply indebted for the people that watch me every week. And I never forget that. And you are appreciated. I don't care who you are. And I will get back in the field for the next video, I promise. Again, I'm doing this in front of the flag because it means a lot to me, and I hope it means a lot to you. So let's try to get the Park Service back on track, and let's get us access and give the other victims' families the names of the other missing people. Have a great week.